Hola, hola. Okay, chicos, this week we're focusing on the differences between using one past tense and the other past tense. El preterito versus el imperfecto. So both the preterite and the imperfect are past tenses, and I created this chart to help you distinguish between the two. So preterite we did all year up until we started the imperfect. So we'll talk about when we use preterite, when do we use imperfect. So for the preterite, you want to write these down somewhere, take notes. We use it when it's single completed actions in the past. Mi madre llegó a las 6. She arrived at 6. It's completed, it's done, it's preterite. Actions that occurred a specific number of times. Ayer me caí 2 veces. Yesterday, I fell twice, 2 times. I fell 2 times, specific, so it's preterite. Actions that occurred over a specific period of time. Ellos vivieron en la casa por 3 años. It's specific for 3 years. They lived, vivieron. You conjugate it with the preterite. A sequence or chain of events. For example, in the morning, me levanté, I got up, me puse la ropa, I got dressed, I put on clothes, y me cepillé los dientes, I brushed my teeth. These are all ended in the preterite, because they're a sequence of events that are completed actions and they're done. You also use the preterite with the beginning or an end of an action. Por ejemplo, la clase empezó a la 1:30. Class began, empezó at 1:30. So that's specific. It's the beginning of an action. It's done. These are all very specific. They're actions or specific. That's how you can know when to use the preterite. The imperfect, on the other hand, is the things that we've been looking at with the childhood stuff. So habitually repeated actions, actions that used to occur when we were younger or things we used to do frequently. Por ejemplo, cuando era niña, jugaba con muñecas. When I was a little girl, I used to play with dolls. Era and jugaba are conjugated in the imperfect. Actions that set the stage for other actions. Yo lavaba los platos cuando hubo un accidente. These can be background information. It can be the ing, like I was washing the plates. I was washing the dishes when there was an accident. So this background information, the ing is imperfect. Lavaba. Yo lavaba los platos. Mientras nosotros comíamos, mi novio compró una revista. While we were eating, past tense, imperfect, it's the ing, we were doing this, my boyfriend bought a magazine. The action of buying the magazine is preterite, but the background information of eating is imperfect. And mientras nosotros comíamos, mi novio y yo hablábamos mucho. There can be 2 imperfects in one sentence. For example, while we were eating, we were also talking. So things going on in the background. These last ones are really important. They come up a lot in stories and things. Telling time, stating age, weather, feelings, thoughts, and background information in a story or when you're speaking are all going to be in the imperfect if they're in the past. Eran las 7 de la noche y me sentía cansada. It was 7 at night and I felt tired. Eran is imperfect and sentía is imperfect. Yo tenía 4 años. I had 4 years. In Spanish, you say I had 4 years. In English, it's I was 4 years old. And hacía mal tiempo y llovía mucho. It was bad weather and it rained a lot. That's also in the imperfect. So there are trigger phrases or words that help us know when to use preterite, when to use imperfect. And I think that's where we should start. We should definitely write these down and have these handy when we're doing our assignment this week. So the preterite are usually specific, and the imperfect ones are usually like repetitive or general. So for the preterite, we have un día, or el martes, a las 8, una vez, 2 veces, el mes pasado, el 5 de febrero, ayer anoche, anteayer, hace un año, por una hora, por fin, de repente, y de pronto. These can be found on the Quizlet. So you want to define these and memorize these and know that when you see these in a sentence, it's typically going to be a verb conjugated with the preterite. The imperfect ones are a veces, a menudo, de vez en cuando, mientras, muchas veces, los lunes, cada día, todos los días, frecuentemente, siempre, generalmente, de niño, and time, age, thoughts, feelings, and weather. Don't forget, those will automatically make it the imperfect, even if we're talking about the feelings yesterday or the time it was 2 days ago. So even if you have a specific preterite trigger phrase, if you see time, age, thoughts, and feelings, and weather in a sentence, it's going to be imperfect. So these take over, the ones with the stars take over the sentence. So let's practice. Let's try these on a piece of paper, write these down, and then I'll talk you through why it is one or the other. You're going to decide, is it the first conjugation, the preterite, or is the second conjugation, the imperfect? And also look for a trigger phrase. So look for one of those phrases that we just listed on this last page. Because if you see it, you can kind of guess that it's going to be preterite or imperfect, but don't forget about these down here. Carmen trabajó o trabajaba en una tienda por 2 años. Carmen worked in a store for 2 years. Is it preterite or imperfect? Let's look for the trigger phrase. The trigger phrase is por 2 años. So for 2 years. Is that specific or general? It's pretty specific. So we're going to use the preterite, trabajó. Oops. Let's make it P. Trabajó. And on the line, you would write a P for preterite. Let's try number 2. Anoche, nosotros lavamos or lavábamos el coche. Last night, we washed or we were washing the car. So if it's last night, that's our trigger phrase or trigger word. Anoche. We look back at this list. Anoche falls under the preterite, and it means last night. So last night is pretty specific. So preterite, and we pick lavamos. Número 3. Mis abuelos fueron or iban de vacaciones cada verano. My grandparents went on vacation each summer. Each summer. Let's go look back at the list. Cada verano. I don't see cada verano, but I see cada día. Cada día. Each day or each summer is repetitive. So it's got to be the imperfect. I'll put an I on the line, and I'll choose the second conjugation, which is the imperfect conjugation. And I'll highlight cada verano. Cada verano. So I want you to try the rest on your own, and on the next slide, I'll give you the answers. So pause here, write them down, write your reason. There's a big line in number 5 and 7 and 10. So you can write feelings, thoughts, weather, background information, because some of these might be a rule that falls, that's not like a trigger phrase, but it's one of those rules that we talked about, like telling time, stating age, and all of that in the past. So try these and then check the next slide for the answers. Actually gonna add them in while you're working. So you might want to pause here and then check as I go. So I'll go through each answer now. Yo trabajaba mientras mi hijo vio o veía la televisión. Mientras is a trigger word. While. I was working while my son was watching TV. So I would say that one is veía and imperfect because it's 2 actions that are kind of simultaneously happening in the past. And mientras is a trigger word for the imperfect. El hombre que yo vi en la tienda anoche fue or era bajo y feo. So we have a trigger word anoche, but it's describing the man as short and ugly. The man I saw in the store last night was short and ugly. So if it's a description, if we go back to the rules here, it's background information. So if it's background information about the man, it's going to be era. This one's kind of tricky. So write background information. And that one's imperfect. Mi mejor amigo y yo viajamos o viajábamos a España el verano pasado. El verano pasado is the trigger phrase, last summer. Last summer specific, so it's preterite. My best friend and I traveled to Spain last summer. Preterite. 7. Margarita empezó a caminar cuando tuvo o tenía 2 años de edad. Margaret began walking when she was 2 years of age. So that's describing her age. So that's the imperfect. And we're going to choose tenía because it's always going to be tenía when we're talking about age. 8. Mis hermanos nunca hicieron or hacían los quehaceres cuando eran niños. My brothers never did chores when they were little. We're talking about their childhood. We see the word nunca. Nunca is never. So it's very like repetitive. They never did chores. So it's going to be imperfect. And it's hacían. We'll also get this trigger phrase here, when they were little. 9. El lunes, vosotros tuvisteis or teníais un examen muy difícil. On Monday, trigger. On Monday, you all had a tough exam. You had the exam once. It was on Monday, so it's preterite. And last but not least, yo estaba muy enojada cuando yo supe o sabía la verdad. I was very angry when I found out the truth or I knew the truth. Typically, you find out something once. So once you find it out, it's preterite. That one's kind of a trick question. But cuando is a trigger, helps us know when to switch to the preterite. So here are the answers. Check your answers. Hopefully this wasn't too confusing, and we'll chat more when we meet about the preterite and the imperfect. Gracias.